Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Let us assume that a person was a lying scumbag. And let us assume that they were also a socialist apologist. But I repeat myself. David Pacman has done a show called Debunked. Socialism has never worked. Now before we begin, I want to remember some words of Ayn Rand's. She said, and I just have a snippet from this sentence in Galt's speech in my head. She said, "The fools that you succeed in fooling." And she's talking about liars. If you're a liar, you go around the world trying to deceive people. Your worst enemy is an honest man who can understand what you're saying and see through you and see past you. What you seek, what you want, what you value, if you're a liar, what you emotionally feel positive towards, is stupid, dishonest men who are gullible and who will believe your lies. So if you are a dishonest liar, you will tend to like dishonest, lying, terrible people. And you will also tend to hate good people. You will tend to dislike them because you're afraid of them and they will see through you. Okay, David Pacman, shall we?
Socialism has never worked. It's become a truism repeated by right-wingers and people who just don't know much about political theory.
Socialism has never worked is a truism repeated by people who just don't know political theory. You stupid scumbag. So, who are you talking to? You must be talking to stupid, uneducated people because you are lying. It is not the case that they do not know political theory, political history period. I suspect you may not. But I just wanted to set the grounds right there, ladies and gentlemen. He's a dishonest man. And he's starting out with lies and slander. He starts his goddamn video with lies and slander. What a pink commie son of a bitch.
It could be something someone tries to say when you tell them you voted for Bernie Sanders. Psh, Bernie Sanders. Don't you know that socialism has never worked? Many don't know much about the history of socialism.
Many don't know much about the history of socialism. Again with the slander. Slandering your audience. Who are you aiming at? Who are you talking to? See? He's not going to fool any intelligent people with this. He's not going to fool any honest people with this. He might fool fools. He might fool idiots. He might fool the credulous and the gullible, but not honest people. So, that's just, I don't know what that is. That's a lesson for us ethically with him, huh?
Or even really understand what socialism actually is.
We don't even really understand what it is. Really? But you do. All of us who believe that socialism has failed, we don't really understand what it is. Wow, he's really pushing his luck with finding any credibility with intelligent people with this kind of garbage.
Hear the word socialism and they think of authoritarian regimes like the Soviet Union or North Korea.
Now, why would you think of the Soviet Union or North Korea when you think of socialism? Why wouldn't you think of something more recent and more peaceful like Venezuela or Cuba? Well, North Korea is pretty recent, isn't it? Why would we think of that? Why wouldn't we think of something a little more medium history like Berlin, right? The Berlin Wall. Why wouldn't we think of... What would we think of?
Or even worse, they might say, hey, socialism doesn't work when they're having a conversation about someone like Barack Barack Obama, implying that Obama is himself a socialist. Now, it should go without saying that Obama is not a socialist, but
Obama would have to step up several rungs to become a socialist.
this actually has to be explained to some people. This is true regardless of whether you are for or against socialism or communism or capitalism or social democracy. I am not a socialist, but I can only understand that if I actually know what socialism is. So let's begin there. Defined by a textbook, socialism is the collective ownership of a society's means of production. Means of production could be non-human resources used to produce things.
Now, if that is the definition, then why would we have thought of Soviet Russia, or Nazi Germany, or North Korea? Why would those have come to mind if that's the definition? The collective ownership of the means of production. Oh, well, because those societies are the places where that has happened. Now, why would that always coincide with utter horror and slaughter and starvation and suffering? Why would the centralization of the means of production always cause untold horror? Not a question that he is equipped to even consider, because he says, oh, didn't happen. Didn't happen.
Economic value like real estate or farmland, natural resources, equipment, buildings, infrastructure, roads, and collective ownership of these things, meaning workers or the public own them. Some define socialism as a system by which social equality can be achieved. In this broader way of thinking about it, socialism could mean any kind of socialistic philosophies or attitudes or tendencies, or a system that combines orthodox socialist practices with other constructs like capitalism. For instance, you could say that some Scandinavian countries are socialistic by modern standards, not because they...
Quick lesson in Scandinavia. Let's stop for a second here, shall we? I once read a history of Sweden, and I was a little bit surprised to learn that they had a very free economy up to the 1960s. Very free economy. Lots of industry. People started businesses. Their economy sold and exported great numbers of things. Large industries to this day are based up there. Legacy industries from the 60s. In the 50s and 60s, everything was beautiful. In the 70s, they said, this is all so beautiful! And they started spending that money. And now we know what Sweden is like today. So that's Sweden for you.
System where the government or workers own everything, but because they have a system where there's a relatively greater amount of intervention by democratic government to protect socialistic ideals like equality.
To protect socialistic ideals. That was able to start after the wealth existed. And you know, a person like this can't appreciate that the wealth has to exist first, and then you can play around with the wealth. Now, it's better not to seize that wealth, because you seize the wealth, take it from the people that produced it, drive those people off, put them in jail, kill them, and then, that's killing the goose that laid the golden egg.
Civil rights, equal education, environmentalism, and the prevention of abuse by actors in the free market. These are capitalist societies, and they're definitely not real.
The abuse by actors in the free market can be taken care of by punishing them with the law. But if you take the government and intervene in the economy, then those people who would have misbehaved in the free market and been put in jail, now they can just go to the government and get their dirty deeds done legally. So his whole idea of getting rid of these people who would do bad things actually enshrines these bad people in the government. That's what socialism is.
Of socialism as defined in a political science glossary. But these are manifestations of socialistic inclinations, especially when compared to what goes on in many other developed countries. Socialism is an extremely broad umbrella term to describe a wide range of political, social, and economic systems.
Lots of different systems fit under the socialism banner, don't they? Right? Everything from the really extreme North Korea to the less extreme modern Venezuela, right? And they all suck ass.
Ideas. Let's explore where socialism comes from, some of its variations, and how they functioned in society. Some elements of socialism have ancient roots. Ancient Buddhism taught that the individual and all other living beings are interconnected and interdependent. And
Ayn Rand went over this in The New Left, the Anti-Industrial Revolution. She said, they're offering you socialism as the new and the scientific, but it's the oldest thing in human history. It is returning you to the primordial muck. It's not progress. She said they've dressed it up with progress. They've made it look like. They've seized the idea of progress. And in fact, when Ayn Rand was around, the socialists claimed that they would have more factories and bigger factories and better factories and faster factories than the West. Now they've given up all that because it just crumbled and they realized that they can't do it. So now their whole obsession is we need to dismantle the factories because it's hurting the birds and the fishes and the trees. So that's all grown because they weren't able to sustain any factories at all, let alone improve on the West's factories, which was their whole mantra for decades. So, as Ayn Rand said, socialism's not progress, it's not the new, it's not an innovation, it's the oldest thing around. It is the primordial muck. It is the pre-industrial, garbagey, crappy culture that people scraped a living from the dirt in for centuries. So if you think socialism can't work, you're wrong. You can subsist as farmers, 99% people living and working on farms as socialists. They did it for century after century. It's true.
Humans should be treated equally and with kindness. People often drop...
That humans should be equally and with kindness, be treated equally and with kindness, does not compute with socialism. For some reason, we could do a whole video on why that doesn't compute with socialism. But it doesn't. Does it? They actually monetize human beings under socialism. Human beings lose their value as individuals and are ground up for no better reason than because they cost something to keep them alive.
Between socialism and Buddhism, and many say that Plato's Republic first articulated the notion of a socialist state, a state that aims to solve social problems by government action.
Yes, Plato and the philosopher king is the root of many, many great evils in the West. And the philosopher king idea is the ruler who's not in it for himself, he's just there to rule for society. Now, if the philosopher king could be embodied in a true reality, Hitler and Stalin would fit it pretty well, because they sacrificed their whole life, they sacrificed their daily safety, they sacrificed everything about their person and any possibility that they would ever have any sort of quiet, enjoyable, peaceful existence. They gave it all up for a state of utterly constant paranoia and fear. So they sacrificed everything good about human life, or everything that most people would think is any good about human life, for whatever they gave it up for. So they fit the role of a philosopher king who's not in it for himself, right? They clearly weren't in it for themselves. They clearly gave up anything good and enjoyable in life to be afraid for themselves every waking minute. So, the philosopher king, yes, poison and scourge on human history.
Taxes and redistribution of resources. There are lots of other aspects of Plato's Republic that don't at all align with modern socialism. Socialistic ideals are seen being portrayed in the Hebrew Bible, which in many places says that people should be treated equally and that we should be generous to the have-nots. The book of Leviticus says you shall not oppress or exploit your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Deuteronomy said...
None of that's socialism. He just quoted these things that are non-socialist. None of them are socialism. You can be kind to your neighbor under capitalism. You can give to your neighbor under capitalism. None of that's socialism. That's ridiculous. To treat people kindly and equally, that is not socialism, sir. To equate that with socialism is transparently not the case. It is transparently not the case. Who, again, to return to the very beginning of this video, who's he lying to? Stupid people. Smart people are going to be able to see through this. There should be a fact-checking group. Oh, wait, they have that. It was taken over by leftist cucks.
enacts justice for orphans and widows, and he loves immigrants, giving them food and clothing. That means you must also love immigrants because you were immigrants. Don't take advantage of poor or needy workers, whether they are fellow Israelites or immigrants who live in your land or your cities.
Why is that a principle of socialism? I'll tell you what, every place socialism I've ever heard of takes advantage of the workers to the utmost degree. From increasing their work hours from 40 to 45 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 75 hours a week. In East Germany after the war, it was 75 hours a week for steel workers. And how much pay did they get? How much overtime? They didn't get a goddamn thing. They got their food stamps and their little hovel that they were able to live in. That's all they got.
From Ecclesiastes, it is God's gift to humankind that everyone should eat and drink.
How is that associated with socialism? It is God's gift to mankind that everyone should eat and drink. And the socialists starve millions and millions of people. Oh wait, that's right. That wasn't real socialism.
Psalms give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked.
Who has the wealth and the moral wherewithal to rescue the weak and the needy? Who has the wealth and the moral wherewithal to give justice to the weak and the fatherless? Who has the wealth and moral wherewithal to maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute? Does that happen under socialist economies? They don't have enough wealth to even maintain the people that are alive, let alone the people who can't fend for themselves. That's only in capitalism that you're able to produce so much wealth that there's extra wealth spilling over for other people to live off of. Only under capitalism. All of these quotes that say that socialism, he's evidencing socialism. He says socialism's not the new thing, it's in the Bible. All of this stuff it's not associated with socialism, it doesn't prove socialism, it doesn't have anything to do with socialism, and these are principles that could only be observed in a free society where you have wealth. So this is propaganda of the worst kind.
Now, this might get awkward for anti-socialist Christian conservatives, but the New Testament is also chock full of socialist themes. Jesus advocated that all people, including governments, should provide for the poor and distribute resources according to people's needs.
That bit's probably not exactly true, but Jesus was a dirty, filthy, socialist, communist bastard. That's true.
From the New Testament, all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they sold their possessions and goods and divided them among all men as every man had need. And the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had...
The multitude of them that believed were of one heart and one soul. Now, Ayn Rand has said that the value of Christianity was to bring up the value of the individual. Christianity stressed that every single individual had their own value, etc., etc. Every single individual was, known by God and being kept track of by God, and none of them were dispensable. They were all important souls. She says that was an important philosophical ramification that came from Greek culture. Okay, yeah, they didn't come up with it. It came from the Greeks. But I just want to point out here that Christianity is not pro-individual, is it? The multitude of them that believed were of one heart and one soul. Sounds a little bit like Anthem, you know? So, if you're a Christian, what the hell is wrong with you? Of course there's no God. And religion has never done anything good. People do good things, but we can do that without religion. So if you're a Christian, get off of it. Now, he's trying to show that socialism is present in the Bible. Fine, fair enough. You're proving that Jesus was a dirty socialist commie bastard. But insofar as these things are good, like helping the poor, it's not associated with socialism. Insofar as they're bad, as Jesus is here saying, give up all yourself, your individualism, okay, yep, he's right. That is associated with socialism.
Things in common. If you would be perfect, go, sell what you possess, and give to the poor. When you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you.
There's also the lady who threw 2 pennies in, and then the rich guy came and threw $1,000 in, and he said, "Verily, the woman who has thrown in the 2 pennies is given more." So it's valuable in your poverty. Poverty is a virtue, basically. So yeah, there's socialism there in that way. Or what leads to socialism isn't it strange? There is socialism historically, and when we practice it, it leads to poverty. It comes from a period of utter poverty. This practice of sharing things in common and stuff comes from a period of utter poverty. And when we try to practice it, what does it produce? Utter poverty. Maybe the reason they were trapped in poverty for so long was because they were so socialist. In fact, no, there's no maybe to it, right? How long did it take us to develop once we stopped being socialist? Like that, right? 50 years later, we're all rolling around on trains. So,
distribution was made unto every man according as he had need.
Distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. Where did Marx get his stuff? Now, if you think that you're a Christian and you're not a communist, you're just about as dumb as the communists.
Another religious example, in Zoroastrianism, the prophet Mazdak the Younger, in 6th century Persia, promoted the implementation of social welfare institutions and collective ownership of property. Many ancient religions acknowledged the social nature of humans, whether on purpose or by accident, and promoted equality, caring for the needy, and common ownership.
Now, why do we need some enormous overstructure to care about equality? It's obviously almost innate to human societies. Nothing's innate to human societies, but it comes up again and again and again in history. We don't need to harp on the fact that equality is good. We all know that we should be equal, but how? Economically equal or equal before the law? And that's the real rub with the socialists, isn't it? They're so stupid they can't think in an abstract way. They can't think that I'm equal to that guy, even though that guy has more money. We're still equal. They can't think on a level like that. They have to have as much money and the same house and the same car as him, or else we're not equal. That's how stupid socialists are. And for him to be defending socialism, he's as stupid as that type of person. He is that type of person. A scumbag, David Pac-Man.
The term socialism itself wasn't used until the early 19th century in Western Europe by philosophers and social critics like Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, Henri de Saint-Simon, and Robert Owen. At first, the word was used not to describe any one political system, but as an abstraction, a philosophy that societies could or should operate to serve the collective, as opposed to just thinking about the individual. This was in the wake of the French Revolution, and in large part a reaction to the poverty and inequality that was growing out of the industry.
This was about the time that Comte came up with the term altruism, which means otherism. Otherism was just his way of focusing, just saying he could understand that there was one thing that was really against all of his values. And he just said, well, just rule out that one thing, and then we will have my value named. And so the one thing that was against, anathema to his values, was the individual. What kind of a scumbag was he? And he comes from France, and he comes from the age of social revolution. And he gave us the word altruism, otherism.
Revolution. And then over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, there were many, many different philosophies that branched out of this to form separate socialist intellectual movements. This is where the idea that socialism means any one thing is dispelled. When someone says socialism has never worked, be suspicious that they're thinking very narrowly and really not taking...
You know what? They're not thinking narrowly. They're thinking extremely broadly about many, many, many different socialist systems. He's saying, there are a lot of different socialist thinkers. There are a lot of different socialist systems. They all failed. Every single one of them. Every variant, every kind, every time. By every type of different group of people. By secularists and by religious people. By military people and by people who were voted in voluntarily by the populace. Always it fails. Every variant of every thinker's variation always fails. Now, we're getting close to half an hour. That's about the level at which my computer starts worrying and slowing down with the video. So this is the time at which I generally, sometime around half an hour, call it a quits. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I don't know what the hell this is. What a mess, huh? Alright, I'm 6 minutes and 35 seconds into it. I may continue with it. I've got some other videos I'm working on, Dr. Bones and such. Let's blow this channel up. Mr. Cropper will be Ayn Rand's pitbull. Let's blow this channel up. Give me some support. If you're one of the ones that hasn't signed up, there's only 7 of you that have signed up. Or 8 or 9, maybe there's 9 of you, something like that. I think there's 7 of you, though. Give me some support. Go Patreonize me. $5 a month, $10 a month. If I can get, pardon me, $600 or $800 a month, I can give up my temporary job, my part-time job, and just do these videos. Now, I'm going to be doing lots of fun stuff, interviews, book videos, history of Rome I'm working on, and that'll be coming up. So it's not all just going to be these reaction videos, but these are a lot of fun, aren't they? But I think these are really good to get attention, you know? And I'm kind of like a young punk right now, thrashing around, screaming at people, punching people, trying to get attention, trying to pick a fight. I'm trying to pick a fight in the sense that nobody could possibly hurt me. I'm an objectivist. It's like, go pick a fight with a socialist. What's he going to say? What's he possibly going to say? So this is brilliant. My tactic is brilliant. It can't go wrong. I can only get good attention in the sense that, they'll say, well, people can say he's mean and he's rude and just ignore me. But if they don't, if they take my points, if they take my logical points, then we're off to the races. So I'm just going to poke around until I can get some attention. So support me in this. Let's blow this channel up. Let's try to get 100 views. It'd be an easy, quick, easy 100 views every time I post. Bam, 100 views. And then we'll try to make sure it's 1,000 views every time I post. I gave up years ago on my channel, and if I would have stuck with it and just put effort after effort and improved and got equipment and got a microphone and, and got a white backdrop and shaved my head like Steph Bot, then I'd be where Steph Molyneux is. But I'm not there, and he's a moron and he's a racist. But starting now, I might be able to get somewhere. And I just think with Jordan Peterson and with the alt-right and with everything that's happening, that there needs to be more objectivism speaking. I don't think the Ayn Rand Institute has teeth. And it's occurring to me more and more that Mr. Cropper might be the Ayn Rand Institute's teeth. So, if we want to see that vision take shape, ladies and gentlemen, please go Patreonize me. Thank you for viewing.